How's the audio? Can people hear okay? Okay, great. So today we're joined, Ajahn Kovilo's back. All right, 3 big sadhus for Ajahn Kovilo. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. We missed you, Ajahn. You returned to us. Good. Well, before we pass things over back to Ajahn, we do have a brief announcement from Bonnie, I believe. If a mic could come to her, that would be great. Over yonder.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Just a few short, brief announcements. We are still looking for a Saturday manager to be part of the team. We also are looking for a photographer, if you're interested. There is a food drive happening. There's a container back there. If you can remember to bring in some items, that would be wonderful. Every week it will be brought to a local food bank, and that's going to continue through Christmas. And we have a used book exchange on the back counter. Please take a look and pick up whatever suits your fancy. We're going to be visited the next couple weeks by many monastics. Next week, I think there's going to be 7. The following week, it's hovering around 9 or 10.
10.
10. And then the following week, there's 7, 8?
Somewhere between 8 and 8.
Right. So just keep that in mind. Share that with your friends and family. It'd be wonderful to have people come and see these wonderful monastics. Also, I'm going to be sending out a little announcement, but while I have the mic, I'll just say it. If anybody is moved to bring alms for those days, to bring anything, the monks will receive the food around 9 o'clock. It's a wonderful opportunity to express your generosity at that time. So you'll see things coming through WhatsApp and Discord about all of this. But thank you. Have a good morning.
Just to really encourage people, if you are inclined to sort of begin tapping in as a volunteer, the Saturday manager role is really key. And if you don't feel up for that, just helping with Saturday setup and takedown is really useful. And yeah, these next 3 weeks, we thought things would be quieting down, but we have the Parayana Vihara nuns, so that's Ayananda Bodhi, Aya Satima, and Venerable Kunga coming next weekend, along with the Pasadi Vihara nuns, Aya Suvijana and Ayanyanika. The following week, we have all the Parayana nuns, plus Bhante Sumita, Bhante Jayasara, Bhante Chedjasi, Aya Himsa, Anagarika, Virginia, and we'll maybe be here somewhere. And then the following week, we have Venerable Chodron, one of the most senior bhikshunis in the world, coming to visit us from Sravasti Abbey, along with the Parayana Vihara nuns and 2 other monastics, and we'll probably be there in the mix somewhere too. So it's pretty extraordinary that this is happening. So just really delighting in that. And yeah, like Bonnie said, it's a beautiful chance. The Buddha said one of our duties as monastics is to encourage lay people when there's wonderful teachers coming to visit to make merit. So there's beautiful teachers, and if you feel like bringing some sandwich or something for Venerable Chodron, or it's a beautiful chance to give. I think that's all I got, Ajahn.
So it's great to be back. And usually the first Saturday of the month we do the 3 refuges and the 5 precepts, and we didn't do it last week. Ajahn Kevin was visiting, so we can do it this week. I think Chinita will do the request, and the request is on page 126.
We will do all together. Mayam Pante Tisaranena Saha Pancha Sila Niyajama Tatiyampi Mayam Pante Tisaranena Saha Pancha Sila Niyajama Tatiyampi Mayam Pante Tisaranena Saha Pancha Sila Niyajama.
And you can jump to page 128. So this is the 3 refuges. Those are the refuge in the Buddha, his teachings, which is the Dhamma or the Dharma, and the Sangha, which are all the practitioners from the time of the Buddha up to the present who really try to live those teachings. And it is the foundation of a Buddhist sense of confidence or faith. And each of these jewels, these gems, these refuges, hopefully will take on deeper and deeper meaning in your life as you practice. And the Buddha is the historical Buddha, but it's also just the principle or the capacity for awakening. Buddha just means one who is awake. The Dharma is the way things are, the truth, and Sangha, really at its essence, in addition to being all those noble beings who've really fully realized the teaching, is on one level just the principle and the quality of love, of kalyanamitta in practice, or spiritual friendship. So I'll recite this first part, Namo Tassa, 3 times, and then you can also recite it 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
We could just go back and forth. I'll recite, and then you can recite. Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dadiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dadiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tisarana kamanang nititang.
Amapante.
Buddha called those 3 streams of goodness, and then the 5 precepts, he called the 3 great gifts, Mahadana, or 5 great gifts, in that you're giving the gift of fearlessness to all beings. So you can take as many of these as you feel inclined to. We'll say the Pali and then the English for those who want. Pangatipata veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature.
I undertake the precept to refrain from breathing the life from taking pieces.
Adinadana veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Atinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given.
I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which not giving.
Kame sumichachara veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Kame sumichachara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct.
I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual conduct.
Musavada veramani sikapadang samadhiyami.
Musavata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from lying.
I enter the precept to refrain from lying.
Surameraya Majjhimadatthana.
Zuramera Yamata Pamadhana Va.
Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness.
I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drug which leads to carelessness.
And I just say this. Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugating yanti silena boga sampara silena nibuting yanti tasama silang visodaye. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is the source of true wealth. Virtue is the source of peacefulness. Therefore, let virtue be purified.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, so we can sit meditation together. And we'll sit for about 15 or 20 minutes. And the first thing to do when you come to meditate is to set the body in a posture which supports the mental posture that we're trying to develop. And both of these are postures of clarity and kindness. So with the body, clarity to your posture. You can do this by elongating the spine, allowing the bottom of the spine to drop as if even into the earth below us. And you can imagine the top of the spine being very gently pulled up as if from above. This is a posture of wakefulness. It's not rigid, it's a dynamic clarity. And we want to be paying attention to this through the whole of any meditation. Have one part of the mind which is tracking what the body is doing. Are you too uptight, or are things just right? And then we also bring kindness to our bodily posture. So around this central column, this elongated central axis, we can allow everything else, all the skin, all the muscles, all the flesh, all the organs of the body, everything else can just fully relax. It's like coats on a coat rack. And so this is a dynamic bodily posture of clarity and kindness. And with the body modeling this, see if you can very briefly just imagine what a mental space of clarity and kindness might be. How big would be a kindful and clear mind? Is there any limit to how clear and how kind, how spacious the mind can be? And just hold that, this wider, broader, open perception of the mind's capacity for kindness and clarity as we watch the breath. And you can bring attention to wherever you feel the breath most clearly. It could be the tip of the nose, cool breath coming in, and the slightly warmed breath coming out. where you can feel the breath in the lungs as they expand three-dimensionally with every in-breath, and as they gently collapse with every out-breath, or in the belly or in the whole body. Just wherever you can feel the breath most clearly. Help us stay awake. It can be useful to kind of yoke the breath to some kind of mental reminder. That's what a mantra is. It can be as simple as just counting. You can count to 6, 1 on the in-breath, 2 on the out-breath, 3 on the in-breath, 4 on the out-breath, 5 and 6. Or if those refuges are more meaningful for you, you can breathe in Put, breathe out To. Breathe in Dham, breathe out Mo. Breathe in Sang, and breathe out Go. Just breathing in these meaningful refuges, and just stay right here with this clear and kind mind, knowing each and every breath. remembering to track your body. If you notice any tightness, uptightness, you can just relax. Or if you notice any too looseness, any slouching, you can sit up a bit, remembering clarity. And then just remembering that the breath is still here. Coming back to your counting or this beautiful mantra of just Buddho, Dhammo, Sangho. Just in the last few minutes of a meditation, especially a group in-person meditation like this, it's really helpful to practice a bit of loving kindness. And we can stay with the breath and just emphasize the last part of the mantra, the Sangho, which on one level really is this principle of spiritual friendship and loving kindness. And so just keeping with the in-breath, Sang, and the out-breath, Go. And you can bring awareness to the heart center, just in between these very gently expanding lungs. And this loving kindness is the principle of dropping boundaries, dropping limits, and just opening. Wishing yourself well on the in-breath, Sang, and wishing all beings well on the out-breath, Go. Sang, may I be well. Go, may all beings be well. And just letting your heart be as big and encompassing as it can be. No need for limits.
We will request the Dhamma talk together on page 124. Please bow to your time. Dhamma jaloka thipati sahampati gat an chalianan tivarang kaya jatha santi tasata parasha kashatika te se tu dhammang anukam pimang pajang.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasahami. Okay, so it's good to be here with everybody today. And today it'll be a co-talk. I'll give the first half of the talk and then I'll pass it over to Ajahn Nisabo. We're going to be talking about what's called the Upasaka form. And just to get a sense, who here has heard this word or knows what it means, Upasaka? Upasaka? Yeah, it's not so much, it is still in this realm of Buddhist hybrid English that most people don't really, it's not familiar, even in most Dharma scenes. But it is a word that goes back to the time of the Buddha, and it's basically just the word for a lay disciple. So as monastics, we're bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, and upasika and upasaka are the words that the Buddha used for people who are really trying to take on the form of a Buddhist follower. And we'll be talking about specifically, we've put together this document called the Clear Mountain Upasaka Guide, which is on our website. And it's basically principles drawn from various sources throughout the Pali Canon. That's the source of the Southeast Asian Theravada tradition that we practice, for how to embody this form. And it's certainly, all of it is very optional. Everything is totally up to you of what you'd like to take on, but it is a way of connecting one's life and one's practice, the form of your life, with this really ancient tradition. The Buddha talked about white-robed lay people, and this is what he was referring to in part. So our guide has about 13 points, and we'll be going through each one of them using pretty much the exact language, and we'll link to this talk for people to reference. But why it's useful is that the Buddha did teach not self. So yeah, this is somewhat philosophical, but it's also just a useful principle that the Buddha taught about the advantage of not reifying a self, not essentializing and selfing oneself or others for the most part. But he also did talk about the usefulness of self-perception. So there's a word samana sanya. Sanya means perception, and samana means a renunciate. So this is something in the Thai forest we practice, is we practice samana sanyas. So even though there's no essential soul, or there's this principle of not self, still it's very useful for monastics to take on this perception about ourselves. We are renunciants, we are monastics. And having a perception about yourself, especially if you know how to pick it up and put it down at the appropriate times, it's really essential for healthy family dynamics, having the perception, I'm a mother, I'm a father, I'm a child, I'm part of this family, is very useful. It makes the roles very clear. When you're a teacher, you need to take on certain responsibilities. You need to keep to certain codes of ethics. So this samana sanya is what we really are trying to live up to and take on in a certain way without making it a huge ego thing that we're clamped and attached to in unhealthy ways. Similarly, this upasaka form can be a healthy self-perception that lay people can take on. So the first principle that we highlight in this form is taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, as we all did just earlier this morning. When the Buddha was asked, how is one an upasaka? He said, it's just when they've gone to refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. That's the essential foundation for kind of the self-identification, or for it to be meaningful at all, to say, oh, I'm an upasaka, I'm someone who's trying to live a Buddhist life, is taking these three refuges. And really what that means, the totality of what that means for each person will be slightly different. And each one of those refuges, as I mentioned earlier, will change and mature and develop over time as you really try to live this. So these three refuges can be considered almost an orienting of your life. So as monastics, we physically orient our lives around the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. We live in huts that have a shrine, and every morning the first thing we do is we'll bow to the shrine 3 times, to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Before going to sleep, we do the same thing. So no one is born with a refuge or born with an inherent orientation in life. Either you've picked one up just from your family, your society, haphazardly or unconsciously, or it's been foisted upon you in some way that you didn't totally choose, or you can actively decide what your refuge is going to be. And this is what the Buddha suggested, is taking on this idea. What is a refuge? A refuge is something which is safe. And when you practice the Dhamma, we're internalizing principles of safety, both for ourselves and, as Ajahn Nisabo mentioned, these are great gifts, these 5 precepts. We're giving safety to the people around us. This is what a refuge is. So it's safety and it's orientation in life. Buddha is the historical Buddha, but he's also the Buddha is the principle of awakening. It is possible to transcend greed, anger, and delusion. That's what the refuge in the Dharma is. Refuge in these 4 noble truths, which are basically the causality of unhappiness and the causality of well-being. So you've got the cause of unhappiness, which is the 2nd and 1st noble truths, and you've got the causality of well-being, which is the 4th and 3rd noble truths. That's what we take refuge in. The Buddha taught these psychological truths, which were true at the time of the Buddha and true now. So that's what we can bow to if we are taking on this form, and if these words become meaningful for you. And would really encourage everybody to do your own exploration, because you're the ones who have to, each of us, have to make these concepts meaningful if we're so inclined. And really, there doesn't have to be much religiosity involved in this. The principles of awakening and truth, and that it's possible for a human to do that, and the principle of love, these are universal truths. So that's taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. The second principle for an upasaka, after that essential foundation, is keeping the 5 precepts. So we also did this, and the Buddha said this is how an upasaka can be virtuous, is you've taken this initial foundation, okay, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, it's increasingly meaningful. I can aim my life in this direction, aim my intentions through the course of a day, a week, a career, a life in this way. But then taking the 5 precepts, and you can do this in different ways. There are people who recite it every day before they leave their room. They have it until they memorize it. It might be taped up on your wall, and just before you leave your room, you can recite those 5 precepts, or you can do it every week to, you can bow to a shrine in your room if you've got one, and then just reestablish these 5 precepts. And then also every month you can do them with us, with monastics. So that's the principle of taking the 5 precepts. Undertaking the precept, again, there are no commandments in Buddhism. Buddha wasn't a God figure who says, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt, etc., but it's a voluntary practice. I undertake the training, sikkhapadang. Sikha is the Pali word and the Thai word for education. I'm educating myself. I'm trying to learn how to not kill, how to be harmless. I undertake the precept to not steal, to not commit sexual misconduct, to not lie, to give up intoxicants. So, and this is a training. If we've been thoroughly involved in killing and stealing and sexual misconducting ourselves and lying and taking intoxicants, it can take a while to kind of purge yourself or to kind of bring some, to really feel solid in these. But when you do, you can trust yourself and other people can trust you, and you're kind of a light in the world. So that's taking the 5 precepts. The third principle you can take on as an upasaka, again, all of these are voluntary, especially after that first one, after you've either bowed to a Buddha shrine and said, I take refuge to the Buddha, I take refuge in the Dhamma, I take refuge in the Sangha, or you say it in front of some monastics that you're inspired by, or however you do it. These next 12 practices are just icing on the cake. So we've taken the 5 precepts, hopefully. The third is what we're suggesting is to meditate, bring meditation to your life. And we're suggesting at least 4 hours each week. So that's about 35 minutes a day or 40 minutes 6 days a week if you want to take some day off, if you need to do that. Or if you want to take it to the next level and do 90 minutes a day, 2 45-minute sessions, one in the morning, one in the evening, that can really bring about a lot of change in your life as well. And there are, you're connecting with a tradition. There have been lay people, and certainly monastics, we all live by these. These are kind of the default for all of our rules, can be said to be extrapolated from these 5 basic ones. But there are probably millions of lay people around the world who are also doing these practices. So meditating at least 4 hours each week. So this is good. It's sometimes if you set some kind of daily limit for yourself, especially if you're working, it might be hard to say, okay, I'll meditate for an hour every day or even 35 minutes, but to have a weekly goal, okay, I can make up. If I missed it yesterday, I can meditate twice as long. I can meditate for 50 minutes a day, whatever it is you can make up, and then just 4 hours each week. So up-leveling. The next principle we can take on is keeping a weekly uposatha, which is an observance day, emphasizing practice. So from the time of the Buddha, the uposatha, the whole Buddhist calendar was organized around the lunar calendar. So on the full moon and the new moon and the 2 lunar quarters, still in Thailand actually, and in Buddhist countries, you have the Poya or the Wanpra, where every lunar of those 4 days, people come together and make it special. It's like the Christian and Judaic practice of having a Sabbath. You can make that day holy, bring some holiness to that day. And you don't have to, if you did want and were able to have the flexibility in your life to have it be on a lunar day, then you would be connecting with lots of others who do that. But you can also just observe it on a weekend, Saturday or a Sunday, just to make one day, okay, I'm going to put things down, maybe put your phone on silent, or even better, throw it in a room, close the door, just step away from all the involvements and entanglements of life that really aren't necessary. Humans got by without cell phones for a long time. It was a long time that we got by without these things. So going back to that, see if you can do that. Make the day holy in certain ways. The 5th principle is to engage in a twice monthly confession with a phala of upasaka. And it's important to note this word confession. Sometimes even we just say it and it brings up connotations from your and it just, God, I had to, your teachers or your family or your priests or whatever made you go to confession growing up, and it just has all sorts of negative and confined and going in a closet, and there's all sorts of weird things there, whereas it's actually the opposite. The Pali word is avikaroti, so it's not going in a closet. You're not going somewhere to confess to somebody who you might not know that much, but avikaroti is literally an opening. You're opening yourself up because the Buddha said to acknowledge fault and to decide or try to show restraint in the future is growth in the Dhamma. And if you can find a friend, and we will guide the Clear Mountain Confession Guide and ways on our Discord server to find someone else that you might be able to do this with. So this is every 2 weeks, and we've got, maybe just get a show of hands if anybody in here has taken on this practice and has for the lay people who have a confession button. And yeah, we've got, okay, a good few people lifting their hands. And yeah, so this is something you can do. As monastics, we do it. It's part of our lives. The Buddha stipulated it, ordained it for monastics. We have to do this every 2 weeks. Is if we've known that we've done something wrong, we meet up with one of our monk brothers, monk sisters, and confess it to that person, lay ourselves open to that person. And it's important to remember that these things are confidential, and you really do want to find someone who you can trust, because it's a very tender practice. And fortunately, we do have a lot of people in this broader lay community who are very mature. This is one of the most mature, flourishing groups of lay people who come together of any monastery I've ever met, had the pleasure of interacting with. So explore that. See if you can find someone to do this with. And it can be confessing or laying open, just the 5 precepts, if you had any breaks with that, or other things you're trying to train in. Give up gossiping, for instance. The 6th one is to create a prominent Buddhist shrine in your house. As I mentioned, in most of the huts that we've ever lived in, we've got a shrine. It can be just a little Buddha statue, or it can be pictures of the teachers who we respect. And just having that in your house it can be the center of your house. It's very nice. In our huts, it's as soon as you open the door, usually, the shrine is right there. It's the first thing you see. Again, the house, the room is oriented around this higher orientation to our lives that we're trying to cultivate. So what could that mean? And you've got lots of Buddhist examples, and many other religions bring in shrine practice. You can think of this as a shrine practice. How can you beautify this physical embodiment of how you're trying to beautify your life? The Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. Typical things you can put on a shrine are, in addition to a Buddha statue or a statue of Guan Yin, the embodiment of compassion, can be candles or incense and flowers. So just beautifying this shrine. And the 7th principle, before handing it off to Ajahn Nisabo, is one which is, it might be the most overtly obvious symbol. And again, all of these are just things you can explore. But the 7th is to wear white in Buddhist spaces, at Buddhist gatherings, or on holy days. So again, as I mentioned, this is something from the time of the Buddha, where the Buddha would speak about white-robed lay people who would come and practice, maybe on that observance day, taking the 8 precepts. So maybe abstaining from food afternoon. As monastics, we've done that our whole lives. A human can survive on just one meal or not eating afternoon. It is doable for people whose health allows it. Not lying on a high bed, and also not adorning ourselves. So this is part of that. So giving up jewelry and makeup maybe for 1 day a week, or if you wanted to try it for longer, it can be a good practice. But wearing white will kind of connect you with this living tradition of upasaka in every Buddhist country. In Thailand, some people will wear a white top and a black bottom, or just white top and white bottom. Similarly in Sri Lanka, similarly in Burma, Myanmar. And just experiment. And it could just be as simple as a white scarf or a white shawl. And it's kind of fun. Remember Halloween? Remember Halloween? This is kind of like a weekly Halloween where you get to dress up as a Buddhist. You get to wear your white and kind of show. And again, no compulsion, and it's not like in-group, out-group, although it is a symbol, but you can just experiment, and we won't at all, it's not about exalting yourself or disparaging others. But it is a way to say, like every, when I'm in an airport, we wear these robes all the time, like all the time. We go to sleep in these robes. We're wearing these robes all the time, including in airports and in places where you might not see Buddhist monks. And for the most part, I'm always the only Buddhist monk or nun that I see. But if there's another Buddhist monk there, I see him from like 2 concourses away. He's like 3 terminals away, and I'm like, it's a monk. You see me too. You see me. Okay. And we know, and there's this kind of symbol, like, yes, yep, same level. Never met him, no problem. Okay, yep, monk, got something. I did it, actually. I met a Tibetan monk, and I gave him a candy bar. 3 weeks ago, I saw him in the airport, and he knew it. We were looking at each other for a while. Which one of us is going to say hello first? And it was me, because I had a candy bar. But that's what these symbols do. So wearing white, it's very normal in a Buddhist country to do this, and you can just do it on a holy day, on these upositas, maybe when you come here, and it doesn't have to be super flashy white. It doesn't have to be, the brightest white you've ever seen, or the whatever. It's not about show, but it is a symbol. And as monastics, when we live in these, we're basically living in the flag of the Buddha, and it is a reminder, like we have to act like monks when we're wearing these, and we wear them all the time, so basically we're always having to act like monks. And similarly, when you're wearing the white robe, if you take this on, it's a symbol, and it can be a forcing function for yourself. You might think, oh, I was going to go and think about, you definitely don't want to steal while you're wearing white robes. Yeah, you're easier to spot, and it's just totally uncool. Off-brand, everybody. Stealing in white robes, inappropriate. But just something to explore. And we've got 6 or 7 more of these principles, but I'll pass them on to Ajahn Isabel.
Thank you, Ajahn. If you'll have to take one thing from this talk, it's to not steal in white. So on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being, oh my gosh, I left my Catholic upbringing for this, to 10 being, okay, yeah, I could feel landing all right. Where are people at? Feel free to show hands if you want. You can put them right here if you want. Okay. All right, we're hitting some good numbers there. So to say that this is, Ajahn Kovila did a beautiful job there, but just acknowledging these are interesting waters for us to navigate, presenting this. Many people in the West are coming from upbringings where they had belief structures which were sometimes held in not the most skillful ways. Many come to this space just wanting to feel like they can put down all that and come into a space where they feel completely welcome and safe no matter what. And we hope you all can continue to feel exactly that way. And yet, these are, like Ajahn Kovila said, the Buddha didn't give commandments, but he did give skillful means and structure. And as we begin to meditate more and take on this practice, a profound alchemy in the heart begins. And as that's happening, there's a lot of shifting which can happen. And a lot of our former values and forms and goals, friendships, relationships, all these things begin to shift really dramatically. And a human being can only take so much entropy at one given moment. Only so much kind of uncertainty. And so what these structures are these just ancient ways of structuring a life, if you want, where it can help hold that transformation. It can be a crucible. But we offer these with open hands. You both know Ajahn Kovila and I well enough, I hope, to understand that they really are offered just as things we feel obligated to give and want to give as options. But once again, this whole upasika form, there was such wisdom in the Buddha giving such a accessible on-ramp. It's if you take refuge in these principles of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, that is enough. And like Ajahn Kovilo said, this is all icing on the cake, but it's great icing. So we want to make sure you can have access to it if you want. So the next one is learning basic Buddhist chants and ceremonies. In one wonderful book called The Loss of Ceremony, I think that's what it's called, the author mentions that ceremonies are to time what home is to space. Ceremonies are to time what home is to space. They allow us to frame moments in our lives with significance, gravity, with timelessness. They connect the conditioned realm to a deeper strata of symbolism, of kairos, deep time, and to a lineage which stretches back 2,500 years. So they can be very meaningful. And there's a lot of beautiful ones. We have links to them on the document, but one really beautiful one is asking forgiveness. And this is just a beautiful thing to do. Ajahn Kovilo and I do it with each other all the time. Maybe he'll often be like closing his door to go to bed, and I'll just knock and ask forgiveness, and a few times. So my parents and I do it whenever we leave one another after a visit. We'll ask forgiveness. Ajahn Kovilo and I will do it whenever we visit a monastery, is ask forgiveness. And it's just, there's always something we could have done maybe a little better. And it's just a beautiful act of humility and connection. And we started to do it after group Zoom call meetings for Clear Mountain administration, because it's just good. Zoom calls usually have something you could ask forgiveness for. So this is just one of those little skillful means that the Buddha gave us to use. The next are just these chants. There's one called the ETP chant. Who here knows the ETP chant? We've done it 108 times every New Year's Eve. It's praising the qualities of the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And the Buddha said that if one is afraid, one should begin to chant this. And I know monastics who their whole life is just keeping this chant going constantly, day after day, and recollecting the qualities of these refuges. In our interview with Ajahn Kalyana talks about one monk at Wat Phu Jongam, a monastery in western Thailand, who encountered a tiger on the path and froze, and then just started to chant this. And the tiger just gently, slowly walked around him. And he said, Iti piso bhagawa, and then began to run faster and faster, Iti piso bhagawa, until he was gone. And this is a powerful thing to keep our hearts stable. And it's a powerful samadhi object. The Buddha also, in the suttas, the devas, the angels, are always singing, or they always speak, almost always, in verse, in poetry. And you don't know from the pages whether it's them reciting poetry or singing. But there's something beautiful about, we don't have the same liturgy that Christian traditions do generally. But we have these beautiful chants that are ancient, that ground us, and which touch kind of this deeper part of the heart. So learning them can be a really sweet way of remembering every morning, every evening, or during your day, coming back, and they can be a useful anchor in the midst of that. The next thing we have is to read part of a sutta every day. And in this, the Buddha's words, people will take on different study programs or attend classes, even after graduating and studying what they need to for their occupation. But to reflect, if you have time to study, what could possibly be better to study every day than the words of the Buddha? There's a wonderful newsletter called the Daily Sutta, and if you sign up every day, you'll just get a sutta in your mailbox, in your inbox. And every day, that's how I get to start my day, is reading the words of the Buddha. And just little by little imbibing these, such a spiritual genius, and his words are still here. Years of teaching until he was 80 years old, constantly instructing different people in different situations, and they're all there for us to read. So it can be really useful to take on a practice of just reading a sutta every day, or at least part of one. The next is every day engage in at least one act of generosity, such as giving a gift or doing one good deed. So who here has heard of the Saranya practice? Okay. So in Sri Lanka, there's a practice where Saranya means to be remembered. And the practice is before one eats, one makes sure one is given every day. And sometimes it's hard to do before breakfast, but you can do it before dinner. And it can be giving a morsel of food to an animal on the way to work, or I would duck behind, after the meal at this one monastery I stayed at, I would come out of the hall after the meal and find the abbot feeding little bits of bread that he had left over to the line of ants behind the hall. It was so sweet. I mean, he had people waiting, but the ants, they took priority this time. But what would it mean to really take that on? It's not actually that hard. Like, what would it mean to bring a few cookies to work every day? Or just take a second, to maybe once every 2 weeks bake a big batch of brownies and then bring 2 or 3 over to a neighbor once a day. Can you carry a protein bar with you or a few in the car to give out to those who need it? There's McDonald's gift certificates you can have ready. And we have a community member who made a practice of this, that whenever he saw someone who didn't have a house on the street, he made a practice of going over and not just giving them something, but giving them something with 3 caveats or 3 principles at the same time. He would lower himself to their physical level, so crouch down. He would learn their name, and he would touch their hand. Lower yourself to that level, learn their name, touch their hand, and give them something. What would happen in your life if every day this was a prime, one of the most important things you held as sacred, to give every day? That's really good icing on the cake. And if you find that giving material objects or food is easy, but it's time that you're lacking, then that's what you need to give. Find the place where the nerve is, where the self is crystallizing, and find a way to open that hand, because that's where the atta is hiding. So the self. So if you really think, I do not have time for this, can you actually give a call to the person that needs a call, that you know could use to hear your voice, and just spend 20 minutes. And how you'll know that this is right is there's these acts of sanctity that when you do them, somehow you find you've gained more time. It feels strange, but you realize that the tightness was largely in your head, and stepping into that sacred space somehow steps you into a place where time is not of the same nature as it was 5 minutes ago. Or giving what was hard to give, and suddenly you realize you're wealthy. And Longpo Cha would say this, that he said, there's no rich people who visit the monastery. And one of the disciples who recognized that all these very wealthy business people came from Bangkok all the time said, what are you talking about? There's wealthy people who come all the time. And Ajahn Chah said, no, the only people who get are people who don't have enough. Giving is an act of affirming you have enough. And there's wealth of spirit in that moment. And dana, giving, is the first of the paramitas that is listed on the 10. But chaga, the act of relinquishing, releasing, giving and giving up, it's also a synonym for nibbana, for awakening. This is an act of openness that is relevant from the beginning to the end of the path. The next is to stay at a monastery for 3 nights every year. Once again, just all options, but we really like this one. Who here has gone to a retreat before? Just a normal meditation retreat. Who here has gotten to go to a monastery yet? So, monasteries are powerful. If you've gone on a lot of retreats but have not yet gone to a monastery, I really encourage it. There's Sravasti Abbey. It's just 5 hours east over north of Spokane, Newport. 20 awesome bhikshunis, about 4 or 5 monks. It's amazing. And you can stay at these places for free. It's a long weekend, but what I've seen time and again is people step into these spaces, and there's an ancient language of symbolism of, there's a power there. And Ajahn Kovilo and I go to Abhayagiri, where he ordained and I lived for almost 2 years. And the sense there is immediately you step into that space and the poison gets drawn out of the wound. There's a resonance there that is very hard to articulate, but time and again I've seen people go to monasteries with doubt and pain and hurt. And within 2 or 3 days, something happens and clarity emerges, or healing comes, or peace. This is often the limiting element in people's practice, is stepping into these spaces that are ancient. As you practice, you become like molten gold. And the mold that's ready to kind of hold that new structure is there. But it is at monasteries, and it's just a really good opportunity. Abhayagiri we recommend, and maybe someday, hopefully someday, soon, we'll have a monastery here for you all. But we really like monasteries, which is why we're trying to build one. So we would encourage people. And you can reference that Ajahn Nisapo and Ajahn Kovilo sent you, as long as you try not to burn anything down, behave yourselves, don't steal anything. But it's worth doing. The next is to celebrate one's commitment annually. Just if you orient your lives towards practice, if you try to keep any of these, even if it's just taking refuge, coming to Saturdays, keeping some meditation, just recollect how rare that is. Once a year, once a month, every day, whatever you want. The Buddha said one should reflect at the end of the day, I might not wake up tonight. I could die by scorpion, not in the Northwest, but who knows. I might not wake up. Is there anything that I could have done better? Just as a young man or woman fond of adornment would look at their face in a mirror, in a pool of water, and reflect. And if they saw that their face was clean and bright, and if one reflects that one's own virtue is clean and bright, one is glad and rejoices, training in wholesome states. So every day, can you just reflect what a rare thing it is to be practicing for the cessation of greed, hatred, and delusion? It is such a gift, and we can take it for granted when we start to step into these communities and spaces, how rare it is. But rejoice in that. There's a wholesome pride that is worthy and worthwhile to remember. Because as you practice, you will notice the things that aren't quite right, that you haven't quite gotten. And it's so easy to fixate on those things that still we're working on and forget the gentle glow of gold that's beginning below the surface in the heart. And that if you recollect, 2 years ago, I would have gotten a lot angrier there. Or that bruise of embarrassment would have lasted a lot longer. Or I wouldn't have even thought to give up the big piece of cake. Whatever it is, if you reflect, it's changed. That's a worthy recollection. And the Buddha recommended it. It's called Silanusati, recollection of Sila. We're coming to the end, but the final thing we put is to take it up a notch. And we put an exclamation point there to make it extra exciting for all of you. And these are just extra icings, like the maraschino cherry? Yeah? You got it? Good. Okay. I never liked those. So these are some things you can, prostrations, if you ever want to do, Ajahn Kovilo and I both do prostrations full length every morning, and just orienting towards the triple gem. It's a great workout. It'll make you vacuum because you realize how dirty your floor is. We had one community member start this recently and just reflected he had a bunch of cat litter on his head after the first one. So you never know what this will lead to. Ajahn Kovilo does 56, I do 28, that's 10,000 a year. It's a really beautiful practice, and I start with dedicating the merit of my life to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, to Avalokiteshvara and the Bodhisattvas, to my mother, my father, to anyone I can think of, to Ajahn Kovilo, because I usually have something to ask forgiveness for. And then I just pray spontaneously. I put intention forward. May I give up anger. May I be worthy of these robes. May I guide my practice and serve the Dhamma as best I can. That's a beautiful way to start your day. It takes about 4 minutes, and you'll get some cardio out of it too. You can do recitations of refuge. We have this on the website, just repeating the refuges of the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha. That's a beautiful thing to just keep in mind when you're at work or elsewhere, to sort of center your heart. We have someone here who does 10,000 a week. It's Kirk. If you look at that counter of recitations of refuge, Kirk is a beautiful contributor to that, but many people here are. Media diet, to really take seriously where you give attention is what affects your heart. And Hegel says that evil lies in the gaze that sees evil all around it. There are things wrong with the world, but how many times do you have to check your phone to know that? Because there are a lot of things that are right with the world too. So media diet, at least wait until you've practiced in the morning before checking the news, and stop checking it after 6 p.m. And one day a week, can you not look at news? Just one day, people, one day. But you can take a bigger step back if you want. But be careful about your media diet, and you could always consider canceling that streaming service if you want. We put that in there, and then we had some comments about maybe taking it out because it might be a bit much, but you can contemplate. Study groups, sign up for a study group. Ajahn Kovilo loves book groups. He's always trying to get me to join them with him. So often. I did one. Majjhima, Mission Majjhima, it counts. Okay. But it really helps with studying these things to have someone who's really excited about it. And that's honestly one of the biggest gifts Ajahn Kovilo gave me, is he showed me what it was to fall in love with the words of the Buddha in a way that you're constantly speaking to them and reading them. Yeah, it's hard not to get excited when Ajahn Kovilo is so excited about something. He gets really excited about Pali. So it's good to do. So join in one of the study groups, our Mission Majjhima, etc. Consider becoming a host. We have a webpage called Visitors and Practitioners where you'll find this guide. But it also gives you a chance to just open your home to visitors. And the Buddha listed 6 objects of reverence: the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, training, heedfulness, and the 6th, and this is just a flash of genius once again, is receiving guests, hospitality, which was held as sacred in so many cultures. And when I was a young monk, serious, a bit miserable, my parents would call me and say, "Are you making any friends?" And I'd say, "I'm not here to make friends." And I'd sound really serious. And I'd be meditating, and then I was the guest monk, so I'd get a call that, or someone would come and get me from my hut and say, "Okay, we had a whole group of people here for retreat. They were unannounced. Can you get them all into huts?" And on one level, you're like, okay, I guess I can't meditate. But when you steer your heart completely to, like, your practice is to make someone feel cared for and welcome, it does something to the heart that's pretty profound. So can you open your home? And we had a community member just recently who talked about her father who had his problems and his blessings, like we all do. But one thing he'd do is if anyone needed a ride somewhere, he would always give them a ride right to their doorstep. That's hospitality. And the final one is pilgrimage. And that's that if you ever have the opportunity to go to the 4 holy sites in India, Bodh Gaya, Kushinagar, where the Buddha passed away, into Parinibbana, Lumbini, where the Buddha was born, Sarnath, where he gave his first teaching. Before I'd gone on pilgrimage, I thought it wouldn't affect me much. But you get to the Mahabodhi temple where the Bodhi tree is, and it's like seeing a rip in reality. There's a resonance that echoes out of there, and you see hundreds of Tibetans bowing, full-length prostrations, day after day, 12 hours a day. And you hear chants from Burmese and Thai and Tibetan and English, and you realize you're part of a lineage that goes back 2,600 years. And you're not alone in this, and that's worth a lot. So I have written at the end of this, no pressure. So no pressure, but we are wanting to hold these out. And once again, it's just a framework you can decide to take on as much as you want. Once again, an upasaka, the basic definition, is just someone who's gone for refuge in their heart. But it's fun icing on the cake, and I've always felt one of the reasons or indicators that my mom and dad were really good partners is my mom would always take all the icing, and my dad would always get left with the cupcake, but he liked the cupcake, Mom, and you liked the icing, so it was a perfect match. So anyways, may you all take the icing or the cupcake as you want, either one. And good luck, and we ask forgiveness for any sense of difficulty. These are interesting grounds to navigate, but we just wanted to give this to you all if you decide it's useful.
หันตมยังตมคาทาสาธุกรังกทามเสสาธุ สาธุ สาธุ อนุโมทามิ
So we do have time for comments and questions. Just encourage people to be open, and if this brought up anything for you that you feel you'd like to discuss with Ajahn Kovil and I now or later, just know that we're always open to talking about any of this. Matthew, warning.
I don't know that this is a general Upasaka question, but I noticed I've been well known for my news fast for several years, on and off, or I've kind of stuck to it, except for this past week when there was good news. How do you manage that? I was thinking this is nearly as bad as diving in when it's bad news to kind of celebrate what I consider to be good news, and I don't know. It seems like attachment in either way.
Thank you, Matt. And I'll tie that into our shared interest. Ajahn Nisabo and I do actually fast from food quite a bit. And any kind of fasting, whether you're doing a vigil, sleeping a little bit less, or fasting from food, fasting from media, it's good to not see it as a deprivation, to find some way to make it actually, to see the joy in it, see the potential for clarity. So I love actually fasting from food because there's like an energy, my body reacts to it in that way. And similarly, just framing it as giving up. If you don't yet have the carrot to go along with that stick of just giving something up, then it can feel like you're giving something up, like you're starving. Whereas our shared interest, the Sariputta study groups, so people can go online, and on the Clear Mountain Monastery website, we've got a list of what we're calling Sariputta study groups, which are basically, as Ajahn Nisabo mentioned, these book groups, and I think we have 5 or 6 right now. 4. You can start your own.
I'd love for you to start your own.
Yep. Yeah, and they're just great, of smaller or larger sizes, in person and online, and that's a great way if giving up the reading of that which is actually unhelpful, if you find that reading news actually is just depressing and you can't do anything about it, versus this reading something which is actually fulfilling, can be a great way to fill that, what seems like at first a hole.
Well, I think I would, a little bit different question that I articulate very well was exercising this reduced exposure to the vicissitudes of public life or whatever it is, but then abandoning that when there's your side starts to win.
Yeah. Shit. No, it's, once again, most people look at some news in their lives, and yeah, if you get the bad and then you get the good, and it's two sides of the coin, and as long as you have some wisdom around both, it's good. Talk to Matt about starting a Sariputta study group. But yeah, we do preach restraint with the good and the bad, because it is two sides of the coin, it's true. I think we have a question up in front of you, Susan.
Thank you. This feels like a super simple question, I suppose, but I've decided it gets dark this time of year, and it's a little gloomy, and so this is my 3rd year, decided I'm just going to be off alcohol for the 4th quarter, which usually kind of rolls into the first half of the year kind of thing. Sometimes not, a little less seriously, right? But so I guess my question is, in terms of the 5 precepts, right, I'm conscious that intention matters, right? So my question is, how much does the motivation matter? So I'm sort of honoring the 5 precepts, but that wasn't the reason I set down this path, right? So Do I need to start over? So I guess that's kind of the question, is how much does the intention here matter?
Yeah, I mean, most of us haven't gone around killing things too much or stealing. It's, like you find yourself falling into these precepts naturally, often, to some extent. And I'd say that if taking them on, it's the beauty of ceremony, is framing them as sacred. I think one of the beauties of art is often, when you take a picture, a good photographer, it's something you'll have seen every day. I think there's one painter who painted the hands of the peasants at the beginning of the 1900s, and, just a hand. But if you frame it correctly with the right light, it becomes sacred. And similarly, that's what these precepts do, is maybe some of these things are things you are kind of doing before, but to frame them with ritual, ceremony, commitment, changes it. It does. It's true. And it eliminates kind of that constant wiggle room that actually can really take a lot of the heart's space and the mind space. Maybe you think about when you will start drinking again, or maybe you're going to a party and maybe you'll have a glass, maybe you won't. You kind of debate it off and on for for a week before you actually go. Like, we all have the Buddha called them these like creepers that hold the rotting vines that hold the leg of the quail. And these things that don't look that big from the outside, but actually they're holding our hearts back. So with something like this, maybe the clean cut of like just the determination, I won't drink for however long, it lets you put it down in a way that even unintentional putting aside doesn't. So yeah, the intention can beautify it.
What Ajahn Kovalo pointed out about there being useful personal forms, being a teacher, being a monk, being a parent, that was helpful to me, and I would be curious to just hear more about navigating that realm between letting go of personal forms and knowing when it's appropriate to take them on, and and if at some places there's some intersection where they come together as kind of one path, or...
Yeah, thanks, Hayden. It's good to note that there are different ways the Buddha talked about holding. So people might know the word upadana, usually translated as clinging or holding or attachment. It's in this 12 links of dependent origination, like the causality of how we make ourselves suffer. Basically, we have a pleasant feeling, and then we crave it, and then we cling to it. That's upadana. And then from that, we suffer because we've made a self out of that. We need this thing that we're craving. That's upadana. The root of that in Pali is ada, which means to take on. You're taking on things in a way which is clenched fist, and it has all the pain and pressure and strain of a clenched fist. But there's also samadana. When people were taking the precepts, whoever took those, you say, panatipata veramani sikapadang samadhyami. Samadhyami is to undertake. And it's the same root, it's to take, but it's intentionally taking on this precept of refraining from killing, stealing. So it's a wholesome way of taking something up. It's a wholesome way of holding. And I think just having... we can think about it, and it's good to understand how we're clinging or holding on in healthy or unhealthy ways, but also just to feel what it feels like in the body, because oftentimes there is that correlate, like when we're clinging to our role of being a monk or a father or a teacher or whatever it is. Oftentimes, if you step back from the initial grasping, the body might just contract from its own habitual tendency in that realm, or what we think we're supposed to do, or whatever that is causing that seizing up. Just stepping back and actually, I can hold this differently. I am a monk, I am a teacher, I am a father, whatever it is. And just noticing that, how we're holding it, and Yeah, it is said, at least in terms of the samana sanya, and I think you could say the same for an upasaka sanya, the perception of being a monk or the perception of being an upasaka. These do become natural for an enlightened person. An enlightened person, whether they're layperson or a monk, is there's just no more desire, no compulsion to kill, to steal, to commit sexual misconduct, to take intoxicants. You just don't want to anymore. That's where they converge. We are putting effort into holding things the right way. It's like the Buddha gave this simile. You're holding a baby chick, and if you don't hold enough, then it's just going to fly away. But if you hold too tightly, you're going to strangle it. So we need to hold our practices, hold our self-conception with just the right tenderness, and then it becomes natural upon awakening, and hopefully a lot sooner than that as well. Do you want to add anything?
We will have to wrap up, I think, about now as well. That was a beautiful description, and I might just add that whenever the Buddha talks about keeping good sila, he pretty much always has an addendum where he says one does not exalt oneself and disparage others. Every time. He just puts that little J stroke on. It's really important. And to note, he also talks about one lives in harmony with Dhamma, in harmony with open hands, giving, freely giving. And there's a sense, a lot of the Buddhist language circles around the sense of harmony and almost a kind of attunement. And it becomes very intuitive. You begin to feel when you're walking in line with Dhamma in your chest, and you feel when you divert from it, like very clearly when you break virtue. It's like a rusty nail through cloth. But you'll begin to sense like, okay, when you take on these forms that feel beautiful, you're aligned with something very deep, and there's a profound strength in it. And it's not just ego. There's something in you which is aligning with the deepest strata of your heart and what your aspiration is. And you'll begin to feel very intuitively when that breaks. I asked a Catholic nun once what kept her in robes, and she said, after a time, the voice of God becomes the only thing that matters. And aligning with Dhamma is our way of articulating that, I think.
Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap up. Thank you, everybody, for listening, for the questions. So what we do now is kind of open our hearts and include in them maybe people who are not here. On our website, we have something called the Blessing Braid, and we read that out, and this is just, people can add to it themselves, just maybe people in your life who are suffering, going through some difficulty, and yeah, Kirk, you can read that list.
Yes, we have Tik Jiak Duk. Bhikkhu Bodhi's first teacher passed away November 1st. Eddie got in a car wreck, recovering with a concussion, spread care. And Phil, having a difficult meditation on Thursday, November 6th, send metta. That's it.
Okay, we can open things up in here. If anybody has any other names you'd like to bring into the space. Yeah, Juanita, please. Yeah, the Royal Queen of Thailand passed away. Thank you, Juanita. Yeah, Jin. Scott and Deb. Thank you. Roxy, who passed away. May she have a favorable rebirth. Thank you. Mary. Karen, Martha, and Eric. Yeah, thank you, Mary. Please.
My brother Nico and my friend Daria.
Nico and Daria, who can't be here today. Thank you. May your grandmother have a good rebirth. Sadhu. Please, James. Jordan, suffering with homelessness and mental illness. Yeah, please. People affected by Hurricane Melissa. Thank you. Scott and Nicole again. Janita and all her coworkers who were laid off recently. Matt. Bill and Jim. Yeah, please. Siobhan. Thank you, Devin. Okay, well, let's just with those names and sharing any goodness from our practice this morning, any goodness that we've done, and just sitting quietly with all those names for just a little bit. We can continue that practice through chanting on page 19, the dedication of, no, wrong page. Page 33, the verses of sharing and aspiration. Yeah, however it might happen, doing this dedication, may any goodness that I practiced this morning, this past week, however long, go out to all these people in our lives, those mentioned and those not. Now let us chant the verses of sharing and aspiration. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, may my spiritual teachers and guides of great virtue, my mother, my father, and my relatives, the sun and the moon, and all virtuous leaders of the world, may the highest gods and evil forces, celestial beings, guardian spirits of the earth, and the Lord of death, may those who are friendly, indifferent, or hostile, may all beings receive the blessings of my life. May they soon attain the threefold bliss and realize the deathless. Through the goodness that arises from my practice, and through this act of sharing, may all desires and attachments quickly cease, and all harmful states of mind, until I realize Nibbana in every kind of birth. May I have an upright mind, with mindfulness and wisdom, austerity and vigor. May the forces of delusion not take hold, nor weaken my resolve. The Buddha is my excellent refuge. Unsurpassed is the protection of the Dhamma. The solitary Buddha is my noble guide. The Sangha is my supreme support. Through the supreme power of all these, may darkness and delusion be dispelled.
So one thing we do is, if you're new to these gatherings and have come 3 times or less and are feeling bold, feel free to raise your hand and just let us know your name and how you heard about us in a very loud voice, if you could. Please. Tara and the Terras, that was a wonderful one. Welcome. You said it's Bernie? Okay. And what's your name? Mike. Great. Welcome, you too. Please. Welcome, Nate. That was my name. Gift of God. All right. Please. Jack, did you drive down from Mellingham today? Oh, well done, Kirk and Jack. Okay, welcome. Keep coming.
My name is Sam. I also heard about this through Bellingham Insight Meditation and was carpooling with you.
Wow, the whole caravan. Welcome, Sam. Yeah. We like Johnny. Welcome, Ryan. Yeah. Welcome, Wesley. Please.
Hi, I'm Braden. I've met you guys before on Zoom once or twice before, and I think I found out about you guys maybe on YouTube with videos of Ajahn Sona.
Great. Welcome. Graydon, is it? Great. Welcome. And we do have, good. Okay. Well, most of you know, but monastics in our tradition, we don't touch money. Everything here is freely offered and given. Please have some food. There's a lot of food. Also, the books in the back, the ones for the exchange, are all obviously freely given. Please take some. And the books that our community offers are all freely given. Please feel free to take as many as would be useful. If you haven't gotten a name tag, we encourage you to get one. It's helpful for everyone to sort of be able to see your name. And those are in the back. And just to encourage folks, when we take this time after the gathering, it's a really beautiful and precious community. So just feel free to speak with one another. We do encourage the first person you talk to, maybe have it be someone you haven't spoken to before, if you can. And keeping conversation centered on wholesome Dhamma, if possible. And a really good question, which is just a good conversation starter as a default, is just what's coming up in your life and practice right now? What's alive for you? So you can go with that. And I think that's about it. So those who want to can bow. And wave goodbye to our friends on Zoom. See you, Zoom friends. You can stay on for Zoom coffee hour. We probably won't live stream it. And that's it.